The testing chamber smelled like burnt metal and ozone. Daniel Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched another cadet demonstrate their weapon crafting skills. The Draconite student Rothgar hammered metal scraps against an anvil with his massive clawed hands. Sparks flew with each strike, and within minutes he held up a crude but functional blade that glowed with residual heat. Around the circular arena, other cadets worked at their stations. The Galactic Military Academy drew students from 40 different species, all training together to serve in the Coalition fleet. Today's exercise was supposed to showcase each species' natural combat advantages. Daniel had known this day would come eventually, but he had hoped for more time to prepare. Instructor Kalthos moved between stations on 6 jointed legs. His insectoid body stood nearly 3 meters tall, and his compound eyes missed nothing. When he reached Daniel's station, his antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. "Cadet Reed," Kalthos said, his translator rendering his clicking speech into standard language. "You have been assigned your materials." Daniel looked down at his workbench. A neat stack of white paper sat there, about 200 sheets. Nothing else. No tools, no weapons, no metal or crystal or anything remotely dangerous. Just paper. Laughter rippled through the other cadets. Pelira, a Quellan with blue amphibious skin, covered her mouth with webbed fingers. Even she found it funny, though her eyes showed curiosity rather than mockery. "Is this a joke?" Rothgar called out, his voice deep and rumbling. "Humans are supposed to be clever, yes? What will he do, write a threatening letter?" More laughter. Daniel felt heat rise to his face, but he kept his expression neutral. His grandfather had taught him better than to react to provocation. The old Marine had survived 3 wars and countless battles, and he always said the same thing: stay calm, assess the situation, adapt. "This is no joke," Kalthos announced to the chamber. "Intelligence reports claim humans can weaponize anything. We have heard stories of improvised explosives from fertilizer, of sharpened credit cards used as knives, of chemical weapons made from cleaning supplies. Today we test if these stories are true or merely propaganda." Daniel picked up the stack of paper and examined it carefully. Standard administrative stock, probably 32-pound weight. Decent quality, which meant good fiber content. The sheets had a slight texture, indicating cotton blend rather than pure wood pulp. He pressed his thumb against one sheet and felt the grain direction. "You have 30 minutes, Kalthos said. At the end, you will demonstrate your weapon against combat drones. Those who fail to create functional weapons will repeat this course level." The timer appeared on the wall display, numbers glowing red. 30 minutes. Daniel set the paper down and closed his eyes for a moment. His mind went back to childhood, to his grandfather's small house in Oregon. The old man had taught him so many things that seemed useless at the time. Origami, paper folding, how to test paper strength, how moisture affected fiber bonds. A real warrior knows every material has potential, his grandfather had said once, folding a paper crane with scarred hands. Rich men buy expensive weapons. Poor men learn to make weapons from whatever they find. Guess which one survives when everything goes wrong? Daniel opened his eyes. He raised his hand. "Instructor, may I request water?" Kalthos tilted his head, antennae swiveling. "Water is available at the hydration station. You may take what you need, as all cadets may." Daniel walked across the arena to the water dispenser. He filled a small container and returned to his station. Around him, other cadets completed their weapons. Pelira had shaped crystalline shards into a wicked 3-pronged spear that hummed with energy. A Hissic reptilian named Source had bonded polymer compounds into flexible whips that crackled with chemical reactions. Everyone else was finishing. Daniel was just beginning. He sorted through the paper, testing each sheet between his fingers. Thickness varied slightly. He separated the sheets into 3 piles based on weight and fiber content. Then he took the heaviest sheets and began to fold them with precise, deliberate movements. The first fold created a long rectangle. The second fold, perpendicular to the first, doubled the thickness. He dipped his fingers in water and ran moisture along specific fold lines. The water darkened the paper but also activated something in the fibers, making them more pliable. He continued folding, creating a tight geometric pattern that compressed the paper layers together. "What is he doing?" someone whispered. "Children's crafts," Rothgar said dismissively. "He admits defeat." Daniel ignored them. His hands moved faster now, muscle memory taking over. Fold, compress, add water, fold again. The paper transformed under his touch, becoming denser and more rigid with each iteration. He created a core structure from the heaviest paper, then began wrapping it with the medium weight sheets. The timer showed 10 minutes remaining. Now came the critical part. Daniel took thin strips of paper and began weaving them around the core in a specific pattern. Each strip overlapped the previous one at calculated angles. He used water sparingly now, just enough to create adhesion. The weave formed a diamond pattern that distributed force along multiple planes. 5 minutes left. The weapon was taking shape. It looked like a blade, narrow and straight, about 40 centimeters long. The handle area was thicker, with wrapped layers for grip. The blade section tapered to a thin edge. Daniel examined it critically, then made final adjustments. He reinforced stress points with additional paper strips and used the last of his water to seal everything together. The timer hit 0. All cadets, present your weapons for inspection, Kalthos commanded. Daniel stood and held his creation. It looked fragile compared to the others. Hrothgar's metal blade, Pelira's crystal spear, Source's polymer whips, all of them appeared deadly and functional. Daniel's paper blade looked like something a child might make in art class. Kalthos moved from station to station, examining each weapon. He tested their balance, checked their construction, made notes on a data pad. When he reached Daniel, the instructor's antennae quivered with obvious interest. "This is your weapon, Cadet Reed." "Yes, instructor." Kalthos reached out with one segmented limb. Daniel handed him the blade carefully. The instructor held it up to the light, rotated it, pressed his claw against the edge. "Interesting," Kalthos said. "It appears to have structural integrity. We shall see if it has functionality." He returned the blade to Daniel and addressed the entire group. "Combat demonstration will now commence. Each cadet will face combat drones set to level 3 difficulty. Destroy as many as you can before your weapon fails. Cadet Hrothgar, you are first." Hrothgar stepped into the combat circle with his metal blade held high. The arena lights dimmed, and 3 spherical drones materialized from ceiling hatches. They hovered silently for a moment, scanning their target with red optical sensors. Then they attacked. The Draconite moved with surprising speed for his size. His blade connected with the first drone, and sparks exploded across the arena floor. The drone spun away, damaged but still functional. Hrothgar pivoted and brought his weapon down on the second drone, crushing it completely. The third drone fired an energy burst that Hrothgar absorbed with his thick scales. He roared and swung again, destroying it. 3 more drones appeared. Hrothgar fought efficiently, using his natural strength and the metal blade's durability. By the time the exercise ended, he had destroyed 8 drones. His blade remained intact, glowing hot from the impacts. "Acceptable performance," Kalthos noted. Next, Cadet Pelira. The Quellan approached the circle with her crystal spear. She moved like water, flowing between drone attacks with grace that came from her amphibious biology. The crystalline weapon hummed as it sliced through the air, and each drone it touched sparked and fell. Pelira destroyed 7 drones before one managed to crack her spear with a direct energy blast. She stepped back, breathing hard but satisfied. Source went next with his polymer whips. He destroyed 6 drones using the flexible weapons to grab and crush them. Then came others, each demonstrating their species' approach to combat. Most destroyed between 6 and 9 drones. Finally, Kalthos called Daniel forward. The whispers started immediately. Cadets gathered at the arena edge to watch. Some looked curious. Most looked amused. Daniel heard Hrothgar say something about human fragility to another student, followed by laughter. Daniel entered the circle and held his paper blade in a ready position. His grandfather had taught him basic knife fighting, though the old Marine had always emphasized that fancy techniques meant nothing without fundamentals. Balance, Distance, timing, those mattered more than elaborate moves. The first 3 drones appeared. They hovered briefly, assessing this new opponent. Then they dove toward him. Daniel moved. His blade swept up in a smooth arc and connected with the first drone. The paper weapon made a sharp whistling sound as it cut through the air. The blade passed through the drone's armored casing like it was cutting through cloth. The drone split in 2 pieces and crashed to the floor, sparking wildly. Silence fell over the watching cadets. The second drone attacked from behind. Daniel spun, and his blade bent around his body with unexpected flexibility. The paper curved, then snapped rigid again as it made contact. Another clean cut. Another destroyed drone. The third drone tried to maintain distance, firing energy bursts. Daniel dodged and closed the gap. His blade struck the drone's sensor array, penetrating deep into its core systems.
Sparks, smoke, then stillness. Impossible, someone whispered. 3 more drones appeared, these moving faster and in coordinated patterns.
Daniel adapted instantly. The paper blade's light weight let him change direction impossibly fast. He blocked one attack, letting the blade flex to absorb impact, then stiffened it to strike another drone. His movements were efficient, wasting no energy. 6 drones down, then 9. Then 12. Kalthos made a gesture and the difficulty increased. Level 4 drones appeared, larger and with heavier armor. Daniel adjusted his technique, targeting joints and sensor arrays instead of trying to cut through thick plating. The paper blade found every weak point, sliding into gaps that metal weapons would have missed. At 15 destroyed drones, Daniel noticed his weapon beginning to degrade. The paper near the tip was fraying, weakened by repeated impacts. He had maybe 2 more good strikes left before the blade failed completely. 2 final drones attacked simultaneously from opposite directions. Daniel made a decision. He gripped the blade near its center point and twisted sharply. The weapon broke along a fold line, creating 2 smaller pieces. He threw the first piece like a throwing knife. It spun through the air and embedded itself in one drone's optical cluster. The drone went dark and fell. The second piece he held like a dagger, short but still rigid. He closed with the final drone, dodged its attack, and drove the broken blade into its power core. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks. 15 drones destroyed. The paper weapon had finally failed, reduced to fragments scattered across the arena floor. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Pelira began a slow, deliberate clap. Others joined, even Hrothgar, though the Draconite's expression showed more confusion than respect. Daniel walked back to his position, breathing hard. His hands shook slightly from adrenaline, but he kept his face calm. Kalthos approached the debris field where the paper weapon had disintegrated. He picked up several fragments and examined them closely. His antennae moved in rapid patterns that Daniel had learned indicated deep thought. "Explain," the instructor said simply. Daniel took a breath. "Paper is stronger than most people think. The folding technique aligns the fibers in multiple directions, creating structural integrity similar to composite materials. The water activates lignin bonds in the plant fibers, acting like a natural adhesive. When dried under tension, the compressed layers become rigid enough to cut through softer materials. The blade also flexed during combat," Kalthos observed. "Yet you claimed it was rigid." "It's both," Daniel said. "The core structure is rigid, but the outer weave has flexibility. This distributes impact force and prevents catastrophic failure. When I needed it stiff, I reinforced my grip and kept the blade aligned. When I needed it flexible, I relaxed my grip and let the weave do its job." Hrothgar stepped forward. "I want to examine the remains." Kalthos handed him several paper fragments. The Draconite turned them over in his massive claws, his eyes narrowing. He pressed one piece between his thumb and finger, testing its hardness. "This should not be possible," Hrothgar said. "Paper is for writing, for records, not for fighting." "On my world, paper was once valuable enough to use as currency," Daniel said. "Ancient warriors wore paper armor because it was lightweight and could stop arrows. The samurai of old Japan had techniques for making paper incredibly strong. My grandfather taught me some of those methods." A new figure entered the arena. Weapons Master Brist, a 4-armed Keldon whose job involved training cadets in advanced combat techniques. He must have been watching the demonstration from the observation deck. "Cadet Reed," Brist said, his forearms crossing in a gesture of respect. "That was extraordinary. I have monitored thousands of weapon demonstrations. I have never seen anyone achieve 15 kills with an improvised blade. Thank you, sir. I want you to provide a full technical briefing to the weapons development team. Brist continued. If humans can create functional combat tools from materials we consider useless, we need to understand the principles involved. Kalthos nodded his agreement. Cadet Reed, you passed this examination with distinction. Class dismissed. Reed, report to Research Division at 800 tomorrow. As the other cadets filed out, many glanced back at Daniel with new expressions. The mockery was gone. In its place was something different: curiosity, interest, perhaps even respect. Research Division occupied 3 levels of the Academy's central tower. Daniel arrived early, carrying a small box of supplies he had requisitioned from the quartermaster. Paper, water containers, and a few basic tools. Nothing fancy, because the whole point was to demonstrate simplicity. Dr. Nessa waited in the main laboratory, her lumen body pulsing with soft blue light. Her species existed partially as energy, their physical forms more like containers than true bodies. She had 6 research assistants with her, representing different species, all focused on understanding technologies from across the galaxy. Cadet Reed, Dr. Nessa said, her voice like wind chimes. Your demonstration yesterday has caused quite a stir. Please show us how you achieved such results. Daniel set his box on the central workbench. The laboratory was equipped with sophisticated scanning equipment, molecular analyzers, and holographic displays. He felt slightly ridiculous bringing paper into such an advanced space. Before I start, I should explain something, Daniel said. What I did yesterday isn't magic or secret human technology. It's just applied knowledge that anyone can learn. My people have been working with paper for thousands of years, and we've learned how to maximize its properties. He pulled out several sheets of paper and held one up to the light. Paper is made from plant fibers, usually wood pulp or cotton. These fibers are strong individually, but they're arranged randomly in normal paper. That makes it weak. However, when you fold paper, you align those fibers and stack them. Each fold doubles the thickness and organizes the structure. Daniel demonstrated basic folds while he talked. The assistants leaned in, watching closely. One of them, a crystalline being named Voss, activated recording equipment. The key is understanding compression, Daniel continued. When you fold paper tightly and press the folds flat, you squeeze out air gaps and force the fibers into contact with each other. This creates friction and natural bonding. He picked up the water container. Now comes the important part. Water does several things. First, it makes the fibers temporarily flexible, so you can achieve tighter folds. Second, it activates the lignin that naturally exists in plant material. Lignin is like natural glue. When paper dries while under pressure, the lignin bonds the fibers together permanently. Dr. Nessa's light pulsed brighter. Fascinating. So the water is not merely for shaping, but for creating molecular bonds? Exactly, Daniel said. Also, the water adds temporary weight and helps the paper hold its shape while you work with it. Once it dries, the structure becomes rigid. He spent the next hour creating a small blade while explaining each step. Fold, compress, add water, fold again. The researchers took measurements at every stage. They used scanners to analyze the molecular structure, mapping how the fibers aligned with each fold. The tensile strength increases exponentially, Voss observed, reading data from a holographic display. After 8 folds, the material is 40 times stronger than the original sheet. But there's a limit, Daniel said. You can only fold paper so many times before it becomes too thick to fold further. That's why the technique combines folding with weaving. You create multiple folded strips and then weave them together. This distributes stress across multiple planes. He demonstrated the weaving pattern, explaining how different angles provided different properties. A tight weave created rigidity. A looser weave allowed flexibility. By varying the pattern, you could make a blade that was rigid along the cutting edge but flexible along the spine. Dr. Nessa examined the completed demonstration blade. The cutting edge appears quite sharp. Compressed paper fibers can be surprisingly sharp, Daniel said. They won't hold an edge like metal, but for short-term use, they're effective. The ancient Japanese made paper swords called kamikiri for training purposes. Some were sharp enough to cut bamboo. He picked up the blade and carefully ran his thumb near the edge, not quite touching. The real advantage isn't raw cutting power. It's weight and speed. This blade weighs almost nothing compared to metal. That means faster strikes, quicker recovery, and less fatigue. In combat, speed often matters more than raw power. One of the research assistants, a small furred creature named Pip, raised a hand. But the blade failed after 15 drone eliminations. A metal weapon would last much longer. True, Daniel agreed. But consider the context. I made this weapon in 30 minutes from materials everyone considered useless. If you gave me an hour and better materials like fabric or plastic sheets, I could make something that lasts much longer. The point isn't to replace proper weapons. The point is that you can create functional weapons from almost anything if you understand the principles. Dr. Nessa's body brightened with what Daniel had learned indicated excitement in her species. This explains much about human reports from conflict zones. Intelligence files document humans creating weapons from debris, furniture, even clothing. We assumed these were exaggerations. No exaggerations, Daniel said. Humans have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. When you need a weapon and don't have one, you learn to improvise. Throughout human history, soldiers have found themselves cut off from supplies, trapped behind enemy lines, or imprisoned. Those who survived learned to make do with whatever was available. He pulled out several more sheets of paper and created different designs while he talked. A short dagger shape, a longer spear point, even a small star-shaped throwing weapon. Each design optimized different properties. The real lesson here isn't about paper specifically, Daniel said. It's about changing how you think about materials. Most species I've met assign fixed purposes to things. This is a weapon. This is a tool. This is waste. Humans tend to see everything as having potential uses beyond the obvious. Voss studied the various paper weapons with fascination. We focus too much on the material and not enough on the methodology. The human approach is to view all materials as having hidden properties waiting to be revealed through proper technique. Exactly, Daniel said. A human engineer doesn't ask, what is this made for? And they ask, what can I make this do? It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything. Dr. Nessa collected all the demonstration pieces carefully. Cadet Reed, I am recommending you assist in developing new training protocols. If our soldiers can learn to think this way, it could prove invaluable in survival situations. Word spread quickly through the academy. By the end of the day, Daniel had received 3 requests to give demonstration lectures. Weapons Master Brist wanted him to teach an elective course. Even Admiral Gresh, the academy commandant, sent a message requesting a private briefing. That evening, Daniel sat in the cadet common area working on homework. Pelira approached and sat across from him. You've become famous, she said, her amphibious features forming something like a smile. Daniel shrugged. I just showed people something my grandfather taught me. Perhaps, Pelira said. But you showed us that humans see possibilities where we see limitations. That is worth more than any weapon. 3 months passed quickly. Daniel's demonstration lectures became the most attended electives at the academy. Cadets from every species showed up to learn improvised weapon techniques, though most struggled with the patience and precision required. Creating functional tools from ordinary materials demanded a different mindset than most military training provided. During this time, Daniel also completed his regular coursework, advancing through tactical operations and ship-to-ship combat scenarios. His instructors noted that he approached problems differently than other cadets. Where others saw obstacles, Daniel saw opportunities. Where others requested additional equipment, Daniel worked with what he had. Admiral Gresh eventually made Daniel's improvised combat course mandatory for all first-year cadets. The old Quellan had fought in 3 major conflicts and understood that survival often depended on adaptability rather than firepower. Now Daniel stood in the briefing room with 4 other cadets, all preparing for the coalition naval exercise known as Iron Tide. This massive training operation involved 12 different species fleets working together to simulate complex combat scenarios. For cadets, it represented a chance to prove themselves in realistic conditions. Your team will participate in boarding operations, Weapons Master Brist explained, his 4 arms gesturing at holographic displays showing ship layouts. The scenario involves capturing an enemy frigate without destroying it. Speed and efficiency are critical. You will use training weapons set to low power. Daniel looked at his teammates. Pelera had requested to work with him, having learned some of his improvised techniques over the past months. Hrothgar was also assigned to the team, the massive Draconite now viewing Daniel with grudging respect rather than mockery. The other 2 members were Hursk, an avian warrior with keen eyesight and lightning reflexes, and Talon, a Terravast whose rock-like body made him nearly indestructible. Team leader will be Cadet Pelera, Brist announced. She has demonstrated excellent tactical judgment and works well with diverse team compositions. Pelera nodded, accepting the responsibility. Daniel felt relieved. He preferred to follow rather than lead, and Pelera had proven herself capable over their months of training together. The team spent 2 days practicing together, learning each other's strengths and working on coordination. Hrothgar relied on brute strength and frontal assault. Hursk excelled at reconnaissance and quick strikes. Tolan served as their anchor, impossible to move and capable of absorbing tremendous damage. Pelera coordinated everyone with calm efficiency, and Daniel filled whatever role the situation required. On exercise day, they boarded a coalition transport along with dozens of other teams. The massive ship carried them toward the designated combat zone, where decommissioned vessels waited to be captured or destroyed as part of the simulation. Daniel checked his gear one final time. Training weapons that fired low-power energy pulses, basic armor, standard communications equipment, emergency supplies in case something went wrong, though nothing was supposed to go wrong in a controlled exercise. Nervous? Pelera asked, her webbed hand resting briefly on his shoulder. A little, Daniel admitted. This is different from academy drills. You'll be fine, she said. Just remember your training and trust the team. The transport reached the target zone. Through viewports, Daniel saw the decommissioned frigate floating in space, its running lights dark and hull scarred from previous exercises. It looked dead, which was the point. Teams would board it, navigate through its corridors, and attempt to capture key locations like the bridge and engineering. Their team loaded into a boarding pod along with another team designated as competitors. The exercise was structured so multiple teams would race to achieve objectives, simulating the chaos of actual combat. Launch in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The boarding pod would accelerate rapidly, cross the distance to the frigate and attach to its hull using magnetic clamps. Then they would cut through and enter. Simple in theory, but he had heard stories about cadets getting injured during the violent docking process. 10 seconds. The countdown finished. Sudden acceleration pressed everyone against their seats. The pod's engines roared, and Daniel watched the frigate grow larger through the small viewport. Closer, closer. Then a tremendous crash as the pod made contact. Magnetic clamps engaged with loud clanks and cutting lasers began burning through the frigate's outer hull. Breach in 5, 4, 3, 2, breach. The hull section fell inward, and the other team surged through first, racing ahead according to their objectives. Pelera led their team through more carefully, weapons ready, maintaining formation. Inside the frigate, emergency lighting cast everything in red. The corridors looked exactly as they should, empty and waiting for teams to navigate through. Their objective was the engineering section, deep in the ship's lower levels. They moved quickly but carefully, Hursk scouting ahead while Tolan covered the rear. They encountered the other team once, exchanging training fire before both groups moved to separate objectives. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears, adrenaline making everything feel sharper and faster. Then something went wrong. They entered a junction corridor, and suddenly panels in the walls snapped open. Automated turrets emerged, their barrels tracking movement. But these weren't training turrets with bright paint marking them as exercise equipment. These looked like real defensive systems. Contact! Hursk screamed, diving aside as the first turret fired. The energy blast wasn't low-power training fire. It was full military grade. The shot hit the wall behind where Hursk had been standing and burned a hole through the metal plating. "Those are live weapons," Hrothgar roared. "This isn't supposed to happen." More turrets activated. The team scattered, taking cover behind support pillars and maintenance alcoves. Pelira tried her communications. "Command, this is boarding Team 7. We have encountered active defense systems with live ammunition. Requesting immediate extraction." Static answered her. "Command, respond." More static. The communications were dead. Talon moved to shield the others, his rock-like body absorbing several hits. Even his incredible durability had limits, though. Cracks appeared in his chest plating and he grunted with pain. "We need to move," Pelira shouted. "Back to the breach point!" They ran back the way they came, but blast doors suddenly dropped from the ceiling, sealing corridors behind them. The ship's automated systems were responding to them as intruders, treating the exercise as a real invasion. "We're trapped," Hursk said, his avian features showing fear. Daniel's mind raced. Something had gone terribly wrong. The ship's AI was supposed to be deactivated. Instead, it was awake and treating them as enemy combatants. They were locked inside a decommissioned military vessel with live weapons and failing life support. Pelira tried communications again. Nothing. She looked at her team, and Daniel saw her making calculations, assessing their situation. "The ship's AI is active," she said. "It's locked us in and will systematically eliminate us unless we shut it down." "How long until rescue?" Hrothgar asked. "They'll need to cut through the hull," Pelira said. 40 minutes, maybe more." An alarm began blaring. Automated voice announced atmosphere venting from their section in 30 minutes. The automated voice repeated its warning. Atmosphere venting in 29 minutes. The team huddled in what had been the frigate's recreation area, the only room that didn't have active turrets. Hursk was injured, a burn across his wing that prevented him from flying. Talon's cracks had deepened, leaking some kind of mineral fluid that served as his species' equivalent of blood. Pelera checked her tactical display. Rescue team is cutting through the hull now, but they estimate 42 minutes before breach. We'll run out of air first. Can we override the AI manually? Hrothgar asked, gripping his training weapon despite knowing it was useless against military-grade systems. The control center is 3 sections away, Pelera said. We'd have to get past automated defenses, sealed blast doors, and sensor arrays. Our training weapons can't damage any of those systems. Daniel stood and walked around the recreation area, examining what was available. The room had been used by the crew during the ship's active service, so it contained items meant for relaxation and entertainment. Physical books lined one shelf, rare in an age of digital media but kept for nostalgic value. Exercise equipment stood in one corner. Lockers contained personal effects left behind when the ship was decommissioned. What are you doing? Hursk asked, watching Daniel search through storage cabinets. Looking for materials, Daniel said simply. He pulled open a cabinet and found cleaning supplies. Another contained spare bedding. A third held emergency medical equipment. Daniel's mind cataloged everything, running calculations, remembering lessons from his grandfather and his own experiments over the past months. I need 15 minutes, Daniel said, turning to face the team. Can we defend this position that long? Against what? Pelera asked. The AI will eventually send drones to eliminate us if we stay in one place, Daniel said. But if we block the doorway and cover the vents, we can slow them down. Hrothgar moved immediately, dragging furniture to barricade the entrance. Tolan helped despite his injuries, his strength still formidable. Pelera positioned herself where she could watch their defenses and monitor communications. Daniel went to work. He pulled every book from the shelf, spreading them across a table. Old navigation manuals, technical documents, even a few novels. Paper was paper. Then he gathered the emergency supplies. Water bottles, medical adhesive, maintenance tape, a small bottle of alcohol from the first aid kit. You're going to make paper weapons again, Pelera said, understanding immediately. Yes, but different designs this time, Daniel said. We need penetration tools for sensitive equipment, not combat blades for drones. His hands moved rapidly, tearing pages and sorting them. The thickest pages went into one pile, thin pages into another. He used the medical adhesive as a bonding agent, stronger than water alone. The maintenance tape provided reinforcement. What's your plan? Pelera asked. The AI's sensor nodes and processing centers are its weak points, Daniel explained while he worked. Military-grade equipment is built to withstand energy weapons and explosive force. But precision penetration at vulnerable points can still disable it. We just need tools that can reach those points without triggering explosive countermeasures. He created long, thin spears from rolled and glued paper cores. The pages compressed into dense cylinders, reinforced with tape wrapped in spiral patterns. Each spear was about 1 meter long, rigid enough to penetrate but light enough to carry easily. Why won't these trigger countermeasures? Hrothgar asked, watching with interest. Mass, Daniel said. Most proximity sensors are calibrated for metal projectiles or energy weapons. Paper has almost no mass, so it passes under their detection threshold. It's the same reason security systems sometimes miss plastic knives. Next, he fashioned smaller throwing implements from thinner pages. These required more delicate work. He folded them into triangular shapes, added weight to the tips using metal bookmarks torn from the books, and used medical adhesive to hold everything together. The alcohol from the first aid kit helped the adhesive set faster. 25 minutes of atmosphere remaining. They're almost ready, Daniel said, examining his work. He had created 8 long spears and about 20 throwing weapons. Not much, but hopefully enough. Pelera studied the map on her tactical display. The AI core is behind reinforced doors. We can't breach those. We don't need to, Daniel said. The AI needs sensor data to function. If we blind it by destroying enough sensor nodes along our path, it will have gaps in coverage. Then we can reach the core's external connections and sever them. That means going back into corridors with active defenses, Hursk said, his fear evident. I know, Daniel said quietly, but it's our only chance. Pelera looked at each team member. They were all injured or exhausted. They had no proper weapons and faced military-grade systems designed to kill. But staying meant death, and the rescue team wouldn't arrive in time. We move together, Pelira decided. Talon leads a shield. Hrothgar and I provide cover. Daniel handles the precision work. Hers guides us using his superior vision. Questions? Nobody spoke. Then we go now. They removed the barricade and moved into the corridor. Immediately, the nearest turret tracked their movement. But Talon stepped forward, his massive body absorbing the shots while the others took cover. Daniel spotted the sensor node mounted above the turret, its lens glowing faintly. He measured the distance, gripped one of his paper spears, and threw. The spear flew straight and true. Its light weight actually helped, as air resistance had less effect on its trajectory. The tip penetrated the sensor's lens and drove deep into the circuitry behind. Sparks erupted and the sensor went dark. The turret kept firing but no longer tracked them accurately. It swept back and forth randomly, unable to acquire proper targets. It worked. Hers called out. They moved forward quickly. Another sensor node appeared ahead. Daniel threw again, and again his improvised weapon found its mark. The sensor died, creating another blind spot in the AI's awareness. But the AI was learning. It began deploying mobile drones, small hovering units that could track intruders independently. The first drone appeared around a corner and fired immediately. Hrothgar knocked it aside with his massive arm, but the energy blast burned him. He roared in pain but kept moving. Pelira grabbed one of Daniel's throwing weapons and hurled it at another drone, hitting its propulsion system. The drone crashed and skidded across the floor. We're getting close, Pelira said, checking her map. 2 more junctions to the AI core. 15 minutes of atmosphere remaining. They fought through the corridors in a running battle. Daniel destroyed sensors while the others dealt with drones and turrets. His paper weapons performed exactly as needed, slipping past countermeasures and disabling vulnerable systems. Each throw had to count because he only had so many weapons. Finally, they reached the AI core chamber. The door was sealed, but exposed conduits ran along the ceiling carrying data and power to the core inside. Daniel had 3 spears left. I need a clear shot, he said. Talon positioned himself to block returning fire. Hrothgar and Pelira dealt with approaching drones. Daniel studied the conduits, identifying the critical connections. Then he threw his last 3 spears in rapid succession. Each one struck true, penetrating deep into the conduit housings and severing the connections inside. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every light in the corridor flickered and died. The turret stopped firing mid-burst. Drones hovering in the air simply dropped to the floor with metallic clanks. The constant hum of active systems faded to silence. The AI was dead. Emergency backup lighting activated, casting everything in dim yellow. The automated voice that had been counting down their remaining atmosphere cut off mid-word. Pelera checked her communications. Command, this is Boarding Team 7, AI threat neutralized. We have wounded and need immediate medical assistance. This time, a response came through clearly. Team 7, we copy. Medical teams are standing by. Extraction in 6 minutes. Well done. Rothgar slumped against a wall, breathing heavily. Burns covered his arms and chest. Tolan sat down slowly, his cracked carapace leaking more mineral fluid. Hursk wrapped his injured wing carefully, trying to minimize movement. Even Pelera showed exhaustion, her amphibious skin dulled from stress and dehydration. Daniel leaned against the opposite wall and closed his eyes. His hands shook from adrenaline and his heart still pounded. They had survived barely through a combination of luck, teamwork, and improvisation. His grandfather would have approved. The rescue team arrived 4 minutes later, cutting through the nearest blast door with industrial equipment. Medical personnel swarmed through, treating injuries on site before moving everyone to the transport. Admiral Gresh himself waited aboard the ship, his elderly Quellan features grave. Explain what happened, he ordered once everyone was stable. Pelera provided a concise report. The malfunctioning AI, the live weapons, the sealed corridors, how they had been trapped with failing life support and no proper equipment to fight back. She detailed Daniel's solution, creating improvised penetration weapons from recreation area materials. Admiral Gresh listened without interruption. When Pelera finished, he turned to Daniel. Show me the weapons you created. Daniel had grabbed several intact spears before leaving the frigate. He handed them to the Admiral, who examined them with the careful attention of someone who had seen countless weapons in a long military career. Paper, the Admiral said slowly. You disabled a military AI with paper spears. The paper was just the material, Daniel said. The principle was matching the right tool to the specific vulnerability. Heavy weapons would have triggered countermeasures. Paper was light enough to pass under sensor thresholds, but rigid enough to damage exposed circuitry. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. This incident will be investigated thoroughly. Someone's negligence nearly cost 5 lives. But your actions, all of you, demonstrated exactly what we try to teach here. Adaptability, teamwork, creative problem-solving under pressure. He looked at each team member. You all showed courage today. But Cadet Reed, you showed something else. You showed that the most dangerous weapon isn't the one with the most firepower. It's the one your enemy doesn't expect. Over the following weeks, Daniel's reputation grew beyond the academy. News of the incident spread through military channels. Other training facilities requested information about his improvised combat methods. The paper blade from his original weapons test, already in the Academy Museum, became a frequently visited exhibit. Weapons Master Brist approached Daniel one afternoon in the training complex. I have a proposal, Brist said, his forearms gesturing formally. The Academy wants to develop a comprehensive course on resource-unlimited combat theory. The core concept is that a properly trained soldier should be able to create functional tools from virtually any materials. We want you to help design this curriculum. I'm still a cadet, Daniel said, surprised. Surely there are better qualified instructors. Better qualified in traditional weapons, yes, Brist said. But you have demonstrated a perspective that most instructors lack. You see potential where others see limitations. That perspective is exactly what we need to teach. Daniel thought about his grandfather, who would have laughed at the idea of teaching generals and weapons masters about fighting with paper, but the old Marine would also have been proud. Knowledge that could save lives should be shared, not hoarded. I'll help however I can, Daniel said. The new course launched 3 months later. Resource Unlimited Combat. Theory became mandatory for all cadets regardless of species or specialization. The curriculum covered principles rather than specific techniques. How to assess materials for hidden properties. How to identify vulnerabilities in advanced systems. How to think creatively under pressure. Daniel taught portions of the course alongside Brist and other instructors. He found that he enjoyed teaching. Watching cadets from different species learn to question their assumptions about what made something useful or useless. Pelera assisted him, having absorbed much of his knowledge during their time training together. She brought her own insights, showing how different species could adapt human improvisation principles to their own biological advantages. Even Rothgar attended some classes, though he grumbled about it. The Draconite still preferred straightforward combat with proper weapons. but he admitted that understanding improvisation had value for survival situations. One afternoon, Admiral Gresh summoned Daniel to his office. The old Quellan gestured for him to sit. "I have been reviewing Academy records," the Admiral said. "Your original test score, the incident with the AI, your teaching contributions. You have changed how we think about combat training." "I just shared what my grandfather taught me, sir." "Perhaps," the Admiral said. "But consider this. Every species in the Coalition has specialists who know their traditional weapons perfectly. We have Draconites who forge incredible blades, Quellans who craft crystal technology, Hissik who master chemical compounds. But you know something they don't. You know that the weapon doesn't matter as much as the warrior's mind." He pulled up a holographic display showing deployment statistics. "Since implementing your training methods, survival rates in emergency situations have increased by 17%. Soldiers who understand improvisation are more confident, more adaptable, and more likely to survive when things go wrong." "I'm glad the training helps," Daniel said. "It does more than help," the Admiral said. "It changes the fundamental equation of combat. An enemy might disarm our soldiers, destroy their equipment, cut them off from supplies. But they cannot take away knowledge. They cannot remove creativity. That is the real weapon you have given us." Daniel thought about that later, walking through the Academy grounds. His paper blade sat in a museum display, preserved behind protective glass. Students stopped to look at it regularly, many probably thinking it seemed too simple, too fragile to be important. But that was the point. The blade itself didn't matter. What mattered was what it represented. The idea that anything could be a weapon if you understood its properties. The concept that limitations were often just failures of imagination. The principle that human strength came not from superior biology or technology, but from the refusal to accept defeat. His communicator chimed. A message from his grandfather, rare since communication across interstellar distances was expensive. "Heard about your paper blade making waves," the message said. "Your grandmother says I should stop teaching you dangerous things. I say they're only dangerous if you forget to think. Proud of you, son. You remembered the important lesson. It's not about the weapon. It's about the warrior." Daniel smiled and tucked the communicator away. Across the Academy grounds, cadets from a dozen different species were practicing improvised weapon techniques, turning ordinary materials into tools of survival. Paper, fabric, plastic, whatever they could find. His grandfather would have approved. The old Marine had always said that true warriors didn't need fancy equipment. They needed knowledge, creativity, and the willingness to adapt. Daniel had proven that truth one paper blade at a time. And now, that truth was spreading across the galaxy, changing how entire civilizations thought about combat, survival, and the nature of weapons themselves. The human perspective, once mocked, had become invaluable doctrine. Not bad for a simple cadet with some paper and a few old lessons from his grandfather.